The rain was coming down in sheets, turning the manicured lawns of the Vance estate into a muddy swamp. I was on my knees in the middle of it, my face pressed into the cold, gritty earth. "Come on, Leo. Beg me, and I'll let you go." I stared up at the smug, gloating face of Trevor Hayes, my ears ringing with the rumor that my fiancée, Claire Sutton, was on her way over to call the whole thing off. But in the next second, an umbrella appeared over my head. Claire was there. She slid a black, metallic credit card into the pocket of my ruined jacket. "Here's 20 million, she said, her voice steady. "If you succeed, you come back and marry me. If you fail, I'll come and find you, and I'll marry you." 5 years later, I returned with a net worth that could cripple nations. And the first thing I did was announce to the world, Claire Sutton and I broke off our engagement years ago. New York City, the Vance estate. The gilded gates that once symbolized the Vance family's power and prestige were now smeared with red paint. A single, crude phrase spray-painted across them. "Pay your debts." Soaked to the bone, I was kicked to the ground by a group of hired thugs. The icy mud, mixed with the metallic tang of my own blood, filled my nostrils. "What's the matter, Leo? Mr. High and Mighty? Not so tough now, are you?" The crew's leader, a man with a jagged scar across his cheek, planted his boot on my face, grinding it into the dirt. The gravel in his shoe sole tore my skin. "Your father took a swan dive off your corporate headquarters. The Vance empire is finished. You owe my boss $30 million. How are you planning on paying that back?" I clenched my jaw, saying nothing. 3 days ago, Vance Industries' credit lines had frozen. The company had collapsed overnight. My father, unable to bear the shame, had jumped from the roof of the Vance Tower. Rats fleeing a sinking ship. The same people who had once kissed the ground I walked on had become the vultures circling my family's corpse. Why waste time talking to him? He's broke. Let's just break his legs and ship him off to some illegal mine. He can dig for the rest of his life, and he still won't pay off the debt. Yeah, let's show him what happens when you cross us. Fists and feet rained down on me, and my consciousness began to fade. Just then, the screech of tires cut through the storm. A garish red Ferrari pulled up nearby. The door opened, and a man in a bespoke suit, his hair slicked back with too much product, stepped out. Trevor Hayes, heir to the Hayes family fortune. Once a friend, but always a pathetic sycophant I couldn't stand. He had a few other trust fund kids with him, all eager to see the show. Well, if it isn't the great Leo Vance. "What happened? You look like a stray dog someone ran over." Trevor strolled over, looking down at me with unconcealed glee and contempt. The Scarface thug immediately switched to a fawning grin. "Mr. Hayes, what brings you here?" "Just came to check on my old buddy," Trevor sneered. He pulled a check from his pocket and tossed it into the mud in front of Scarface. "That's 300,000, not 30 million. Tell your boss I'll cover this much of Leo's debt. He can figure out the rest on his own." Scarface stared for a second, then his face lit up. "Thank you, Mr. Hayes. Thank you. 300 grand to buy my life. What a generous soul. He doesn't want to save me," I thought, a bitter rage simmering in my chest. "He wants me to live, but in absolute misery." I tried to push myself up, but Trevor's foot shot out and kicked me back down. "Not so fast, Leo." He crouched, patting my cheek with a condescending rhythm. His voice dropped to a malicious whisper. "You used to be so arrogant, didn't you? Said I wasn't even fit to shine your shoes. How about now?" He pulled a silk handkerchief from his pocket, wiped an imaginary speck of dust from his Italian leather loafers, and then threw the handkerchief on my face. "Lick it clean. I'll give you another 300,000. What do you say?" His friends roared with laughter. "Come on, Trevor, don't be so hard on him. The man has standards. Ha ha. Right now, he's lower than a dog." My chest heaved, blood pounding in my head, so hard I thought my skull would crack. I stared at his twisted, smiling face and forced the words through my gritted teeth. "Clafour. Hayes. Ooh, still got some fire in you?" Trevor's grin grew more sadistic. "By the way, I forgot to tell you something. I heard the eldest daughter of the Sutton family, the lovely Claire, is on her way over to officially break off your engagement. Claire, my fiancée." The name was a knife twisting in my gut. Trevor leaned in close, his voice a venomous hiss for my ears only. "And guess who's going to be there to comfort her after she dumps you? A beauty like Claire. It's a real shame to see her waste her time on a washed-up loser like you. You touch her, and I'll kill you." I roared, thrashing in the mud, trying to lunge at him. You'll kill me? Trevor laughed, delighted. Look at you. You're a bankrupt nobody. What right do you have to the most beautiful woman in New York? She'll be mine soon. I'll even have her tell you herself, right to your face, that she chose me. Crack. Lightning split the sky, and the drizzle turned into a deluge. The cold rain hammered down on me, but it couldn't extinguish the inferno of rage in my soul. Trevor Hayes, Claire Sutton. For the humiliation I've suffered today, I, Leo Vance, swear I will pay it back 100-fold, or I am not a man. I watched him laughing maniacally in the rain, and with every last ounce of my strength, I spat a mouthful of bloody saliva right onto his polished shoe. Trevor's laughter died instantly. Chapter 2. Trevor Hayes's face contorted, becoming a dark mask of fury. You're dead. He raised his foot, aiming to stomp on my head. The onlookers watched with gleeful anticipation, ready for the final, brutal act. But then, stop. A woman's voice, clear, cold, and resolute, cut through the curtain of rain like a sword. The crowd parted instinctively. Claire Sutton walked toward us, holding a simple black umbrella. She wore an elegant white dress, her face pale and without makeup, but her clear eyes shone with a startling intensity. The rain soaked the hem of her dress, but she paid it no mind. Her eyes were locked on me. Seeing her, Trevor immediately lowered his foot, his furious expression melting into a gentle smile. Claire, what are you doing here? It's filthy. You'll ruin your shoes. His friends started chiming in. Claire, you're finally here. You have to break it off with this loser. Yeah, the Vances are finished. Being with him is like jumping into a dumpster fire. Trevor has been crazy about you for years. You two are the perfect match. Everyone assumed she was here to deliver the final blow, to sever our ties for good. In the high-stakes world of New York's elite, people flock to a winner. No one sticks around for the loser, especially not someone from family as powerful as the Suttons. Claire ignored them all, walking straight to me. She knelt, and with a clean, delicate hand, she gently wiped the mud and blood from my face. Her touch was so light, so tender, as if she were handling a priceless treasure. My heart ceased. A lump formed in my throat, and I couldn't speak. Does it hurt? She asked softly, her voice trembling slightly. I shook my head. The physical pain was nothing compared to the agony in my soul. What I feared most was seeing disappointment and disgust in her eyes. Trevor's face was a storm cloud. Claire, what do you think you're doing? He's a worthless piece of trash now. Why are you still bothering with him? Claire slowly stood up and turned to face Trevor. The warmth in her eyes instantly turned to ice. Trevor, he is my fiancé. By treating him this way today, are you declaring the Hayes family an enemy of the Suttons? Her words fell like a guillotine, silencing the entire scene. Trevor's smile froze on his face, as if he'd been slapped. Claire, are you insane? He's not worthy of you anymore. Whether he's worthy or not is not for you to decide. Done with him. Claire turned her back on Trevor. She carefully helped me to my feet, shielding my head with her small umbrella. More than half of her body was exposed to the downpour, and the rain quickly soaked her shoulder. Let's go, she whispered. Leaning on her, I walked step by agonizing step toward her car, leaving behind Trevor's enraged shouting and the disbelieving stares of the crowd. Inside the car, the warm air was a shield against the wind and rain outside. The silence was broken only by the sound of our breathing. I looked at the rain-streaked profile of her face, then lowered my head in shame, unable to meet her gaze. I'm sorry, he rasped. I embarrassed you. Don't be ridiculous. Claire opened the glove compartment, took out a first aid kit, and began carefully cleaning my cuts with antiseptic. The sting was sharp, but a current of warmth spread from the deepest part of my heart. Claire, they're right. We should. The words break up were caught in my throat. I couldn't say them. She paused, looked up, and met my eyes. Leo, what are you trying to say? I looked into her crystal-clear eyes, and all the words died on my tongue. Suddenly, she pulled a black, metallic card from her purse and pressed it into my hand. What's this? I asked, stunned. There's $20 million in there, she said calmly, as if it were a trivial amount. It's everything I've saved, all my investment profits over the years. A jolt went through me. I tried to give it back as if it were burning my hand. I can't take this. You have to, she insisted, her grip on my hand firm, her gaze more determined than I'd ever seen it. Leo, I know you're not a failure. You just need a chance to get back on your feet. She looked me straight in the eye, speaking each word with deliberate weight. I'm giving you 5 years. I'm giving you $20 million. If you succeed, you come back, and you marry me in front of the whole world. And if you fail, she paused. Then a small smile graced her lips, a smile like a rainbow after a storm. If you fail, I'll track you down to the ends of the earth. And then, I'll marry you. My eyes burned. It felt like molten lava was pouring through my veins, so hot it was hard to breathe. I gripped the card, which now felt as heavy as a mountain. This wasn't just $20 million. This was her entire life, her future, her absolute, unconditional faith and love for me. I looked at the woman before me, this woman willing to gamble her everything on my future, and I made a silent, blood oath. Claire Sutton, I, Leo Vance, will not fail you in this life. I lifted my head, met her gaze, and gave a single, solemn nod. Okay, one word, carrying the weight of 1,000 promises. 3 days later, with that card in my pocket, I left New York City alone and embarked on a dark and unknown path of vengeance. Chapter 3 5 years later. The Javits Center, New York City. The annual Global Leadership Summit. The convention hall was a sea of designer gowns and bespoke suits. Champagne flowed freely as the nation's top entrepreneurs and scions of legacy families mingled and made deals. Arthur Sutton, Claire's father and the patriarch of the Sutton family, was holding a glass of champagne, his face flushed with success as he chatted with several CEOs. Arthur, congratulations. I heard Hayes Corp is partnering with you on that massive Hudson Yards development. That's a $100 billion project, isn't it? Yes, and I also hear that young Trevor Hayes is pursuing your daughter. If that turns into an alliance, the Sutton family's future will be secure for generations. Arthur Sutton beamed. Please, please, nothing's set in stone yet. Though he was being modest, he was inwardly ecstatic. 5 years ago, when the Vance family fell, he'd expected his daughter Claire to become the laughingstock of New York. Instead, Trevor Hayes had launched a relentless, 5-year campaign to win her over. The Hayes family was now at the zenith of their power, the undisputed #1 family in the city. An alliance through marriage was a dream come true for him. His only headache was his daughter's attitude. For 5 years, no matter how he cajoled or threatened, Claire refused to give in, always keeping Trevor at arm's length. She always said she was waiting for someone, waiting for that loser who had vanished 5 years ago, Leo Vance. Just thinking about it made Arthur's blood boil. At that moment, Trevor Hayes, dressed in a sharp white suit, walked over. He had shed the immaturity of 5 years prior, now carrying himself with the confident air of a successful executive. Mr. Sutton, he said with a smile. Trevor, good to see you. Arthur greeted him warmly. Is Claire here? I haven't seen her, Trevor said, his eyes scanning the crowd. Oh, don't ask. That girl has locked herself in her art studio again. Refuses to come out. Arthur sighed. A shadow flickered in Trevor's eyes, quickly replaced by his confident smile. It's all right. She just needs time. One day, she'll understand how I feel. He said it with grace, but inside, he was seething. 5 years. 5 whole years. He had tried everything. Money, grand romantic gestures, displays of power, and he still hadn't so much as held Claire's hand. The woman's heart was made of iron. No, it belonged to that worthless piece of trash, Leo Vance. Leo, you better have died in a ditch somewhere and never come back. If you do, I'll make sure you end up in a real one. As the crowd chatted, the grand doors of the hall were suddenly pushed open, and a ripple of commotion spread from the entrance. Look, it's people from Hades Capital. My God, what are they doing at the summit? Hades Capital, a mysterious financial behemoth that had emerged on the global stage 3 years ago, devouring everything in its path. Their methods were ruthless. Any company they targeted was either acquired or crushed in record time. Rumor had it their enigmatic leader, known only by the codename Hades, was a figure of immense power and mystery. No one had ever seen his face. Everyone craned their necks, desperate for a glimpse of the legendary Hades. A phalanx of bodyguards in black suits, exuding an aura of cold lethality, surrounded a man as he walked in. The man was tall and lean, dressed in a perfectly tailored black suit, no tie. The top two buttons of his shirt were undone, revealing a hint of bronze skin. He moved with a steady, powerful gait, each step seeming to land on the collective heartbeat of the room. His profile was sharp, like it had been carved from granite, and his eyes were as deep as the ocean, carrying an air of absolute command that seemed to look down on the entire world. The moment he appeared, the bustling hall fell silent. Every eye was fixed on him. Looking at the man, Trevor Hayes's heart skipped a beat. A strange sense of familiarity washed over him. Arthur Sutton was even more stunned, nearly dropping his champagne glass. That face. It looked so much like that stray dog he'd thrown out of his house 5 years ago. No, impossible. That loser could never command such a presence. The man walked to the center of the main stage, the focus of thousands of eyes. The host's voice trembled with excitement. Let's give a thunderous welcome to the founder of Hades Capital, Mr. Hades himself. The man took the microphone, his cold gaze sweeping across the entire hall. When his eyes landed on Trevor Hayes and Arthur Sutton, the corner of his mouth curled into a barely perceptible smirk. "I'm back." 3 words, spoken softly, yet they exploded like a bombshell in the minds of Trevor and Arthur. It was him. It was really him. Leo Vance. Chapter 4. The hall was plunged into a dead silence. You could have heard a pin drop. Everyone was stunned by the bombshell revelation. The mysterious tycoon Hades, the Wolf of Wall Street, who had emerged 3 years ago and laid waste to international capital markets, was actually the disgraced heir of the Vance family, Leo Vance. It was more unbelievable than fiction. Trevor Hayes's face went white, his body trembling uncontrollably. He stared at the man on stage, an intimidating figure of absolute power, and refused to believe his eyes. Impossible. This is absolutely impossible. How could a loser I crushed under my boot become Hades? His entire worldview shattered in that instant. The success he had built over the past 5 years, the business empire he had cobbled together with his family's influence and his own ruthless tactics, suddenly felt like a pathetic joke in front of this man. Arthur Sutton was so terrified he almost collapsed. His mind went blank, a roaring in his ears, with only one thought spinning wildly. It's over. The Sutton family is over. How had he treated Leo 5 years ago? The moment the Vance family fell, he had turned his back on him, even mocking him behind his back, calling him a pathetic loser trying to cling to his daughter. For the last 5 years, he had done everything in his power to force Claire to marry Trevor. If Leo was back for revenge, Arthur didn't dare think any further. His legs felt weak, and a chill shot up from the soles of his feet to the top of his head. On stage, Leo took in everyone's reactions with satisfaction. This was just the beginning. He wanted every person who had ever betrayed, humiliated, or underestimated him to live in fear and regret. Mr. Hades, sir, with your return to the U.S., are you planning any major investments? A brave financial reporter asked, his voice shaking. Leo's gaze shifted from Trevor. I came back for 3 things, he said coolly. Everyone leaned in, holding their breath. First, to take back everything that belongs to me. His voice was quiet but held an unquestionable authority. Second, to settle all my debts. As he said this, his eyes again swept over Trevor and Arthur, who both flinched as if struck. And the third, the reporter pressed. Leo paused. An image flashed in his mind. The girl who had held an umbrella over him in the middle of a storm. The girl who had said she would bet her entire future on him. Claire, I'm back. I climbed out of hell with the hope you gave me. From this day on, no one will ever hurt you again. But just as everyone expected a heartfelt declaration, another reporter jumped in with a more explosive question. Mr. Hades, we all know that you were once engaged to Miss Claire Sutton of the Sutton Corporation. With this triumphant return, are you planning to fulfill that engagement and marry Miss Sutton? The question ignited a wildfire of gossip throughout the hall. All eyes snapped back to Leo, anticipating a fairy tale ending. Trevor's heart was in his throat. A flicker of hope, as ugly as it was desperate, appeared on Arthur Sutton's face. If Leo still has feelings for her, Maybe the Sutton family can be saved. Leo's expression was unreadable, his handsome, cold face a perfect mask. He remained silent for a full 10 seconds. For everyone in the room, those 10 seconds felt like an eternity. Finally, his thin lips parted, and he uttered a sentence that struck the crowd like a bolt of lightning. Miss Claire Sutton and I. He let out a short, sharp laugh, laced with mockery and disdain. We broke off our engagement 5 years ago. From the day I left New York, she and I have had nothing to do with each other. Boom! The hall erupted. Everyone stared at Leo as if he were a madman. Ungrateful? A traitor? Those words weren't strong enough to describe what he had just done. It was no secret in their social circles that Claire Sutton had stood by Leo in his darkest hour, even giving him her entire fortune. Everyone had assumed Leo would return and repay her 1,000 times over. Who could have possibly imagined that he would, in front of the entire world's media, so cleanly and cruelly sever all ties with her? This wasn't just a slap in the face. This was taking Claire's heart, throwing it on the ground, and grinding it into dust with his heel. Meanwhile, in an art studio on the outskirts of the city, Claire Sutton stood silently, looking at a painting on the wall. It was a portrait of a young man, his face full of life and ambition. The TV in the corner of the studio was broadcasting the summit live. When Leo said the words, "She and I have had nothing to do with each other," Claire's body flinched violently. The paintbrush in her hand clattered to the floor, splattering paint across the polished concrete. Her face instantly turned as white as a sheet, completely drained of color. The light that always danced in her eyes was, in that moment, completely extinguished. Chapter 5. Ha ha. Ha ha ha. After a moment of stunned silence, Trevor Hayes burst into wild, joyous laughter. He laughed so hard he bent over, tears streaming from his eyes. "Leo, you idiot. You are the biggest idiot in the history of the world." He thought Leo's return would be his greatest threat. He never imagined the man would personally sever the only bond connecting him to Claire Sutton. He had just handed Trevor the victory on a silver platter. "Did you hear that, Mr. Sutton?" Trevor exclaimed, grabbing Arthur's arm. "He said himself. He has nothing to do with Claire. He doesn't want her." Arthur, snapping out of his shock, felt a wave of post-disaster relief, followed by a surge of contempt for Leo. That ungrateful wolf. We were right about him. Thank God Claire never married him. He quickly put on a smile for Trevor. "Trevor, my boy, I've always known you and our Claire were meant to be. That Leo Vance is nothing but a backstabbing snake, not worth mentioning." On the stage, Leo watched the ugly display below, his hands clenching into fists at his sides. His fingernails dug so deep in his palms that blood began to drip, but he felt no pain. "Claire, I'm sorry. Forgive me. I have to push you away in the cruelest way possible." His mind flashed back to the blood and chaos he had endured overseas for the past 5 years. To build his fortune at lightning speed, he had operated in the highest risk, darkest gray areas of international finance. He had carved a path through a mountain of bodies to become the feared Hades, but in doing so, he had made an enemy of a terrifying international organization, the Scorpio Syndicate. Scorpio's method was simple. Eradicate their enemies, root and stem, down to the last family member. His high-profile return was a calculated move to lure them out, to draw their agents in the U.S. into a trap where he could wipe them out completely. Until that battle was over, the farther Claire was from him, the safer she would be. Anyone associated with Hades would become a target for Scorpio. He couldn't take that risk. He wouldn't. So he had to choose the most absolute, most brutal way to cut ties, to remove Claire from the equation entirely. It was better to have her hate him than to have her die for him. The summit had barely ended before Trevor Hayes, with a swarm of reporters in tow, rushed to Claire's art studio. He was going to strike while the iron was hot, to conquer Claire in her moment of deepest heartbreak and vulnerability. "Claire, open up. It's me, Trevor," he called, holding a massive bouquet of roses, his face a mask of deep concern. The studio door opened. Claire stood there. She had changed out of her usual white dresses and was now wearing black. Her face was pale and her eyes were red-rimmed, but her gaze was eerily calm. It was a calm that set one's teeth on edge. What do you want? She asked coldly. Claire, Seeing her like this, Trevor celebrated inwardly while putting on a pained expression. I saw the news. That Leo Vance. He's not human. How could you have been so good to him, only for him to do this to you? The reporters behind him aimed their cameras at Claire. Miss Sutton, what is your reaction to Mr. Vance's statement? Do you feel he's ungrateful for everything you did for him? Mr. Hayes has been devoted to you for years. Will you consider accepting his love now? The sharp questions flew at her like daggers. Claire didn't answer any of them. She just looked at Trevor and suddenly smiled. It was not a happy smile. Trevor, did you bring all these people here today to pressure me? No. Claire, I just wanted to tell you that no matter what happens, I'll always be by your side, Trevor said. Then, in a grand gesture, he dropped to one knee and produced a diamond ring he had prepared long ago. Claire, marry me. I'll make you the happiest woman in the world. He had chosen this exact moment to propose, to back her into a corner. If she accepted, he would win the ultimate prize and become the most powerful man in the city. If she refused, public opinion would brand her as a fool who didn't know what was good for her, a woman who deserved to be dumped. In an inconspicuous black sedan parked down the street, Leo watched the scene unfold through the tinted window. His heart felt like it was being squeezed by an invisible hand, the pain so intense he could barely breathe. Claire, turn him down. Please, just turn him down. He saw Claire hesitate. Her lips parted as if she were about to speak. A triumphant smile spread across Trevor's face. But in the next second, Claire did something no one expected. She reached out and took the diamond ring from Trevor's hand. Trevor was ecstatic. Leo's heart sank to the bottom of his stomach. Just as Trevor thought he had won, Claire walked over to a nearby trash can, holding the ring. And with a flick of her wrist, she let it go. Clang! The diamond ring, worth millions, was tossed away like garbage. Do you have my answer now? She turned, her eyes like chips of ice as she looked at the dumbfounded Trevor. 5 years ago, I chose him, and I don't regret it. Today, he doesn't want me. Fine. But Trevor Hayes, let me make one thing perfectly clear. I, Claire Sutton, would rather die alone. I would rather jump off a bridge this very second than ever give a despicable coward like you the time of day. With that, she slammed the studio door shut. She left Trevor and the pack of reporters standing there, utterly humiliated. In the car, Leo stared at the closed door, his eyes welling up. You fool. You beautiful fool. He picked up his phone and dialed a number. Blade. Sir. Your orders. A respectful and cold voice answered on the other end. Hayes Corp. That Hudson Yards project. Leo's voice was as cold as a Siberian winter. I want to dismantle. In 3 days. Chapter 6. Night fell like a shroud. In the penthouse office of the Hayes Corporation headquarters, the lights blazed. Trevor Hayes, his handsome face twisted in a mask of rage, swept every document off his desk. Useless. All of you are completely useless. He roared at the terrified project managers standing before him. One afternoon. It took one afternoon for the core data on the Hudson Yards project to be stolen, for all our partners to pull out, and for the banks to deny our loans. Can someone please tell me what the hell is going on? The managers were pale-faced, no one daring to speak. It was inexplicable. The Hudson Yards project was the cornerstone of Hayes Corp's next decade, and its digital security was supposed to be ironclad. But that afternoon, without anyone noticing, the entire project database had vanished into thin air. Even more terrifying, every single partner involved in the project had sent termination notices at the exact same time, as if on cue. Even the banks that had long-standing relationships with the Hayes family had suddenly turned hostile, not only refusing further loans, but demanding immediate repayment of existing ones. The barrage of blows had sent the $100 billion project into a death spiral. Find them. I want you to find them. Trevor screamed. I don't care if you have to tear this city apart. Find the person behind this. He had a gut feeling this was no ordinary corporate espionage. To launch an attack so precise and devastating in such a short time required an unimaginable level of power. Could be Leo. The thought flickered through his mind, but he quickly dismissed it. Impossible. Even if he is Hades, his power base is overseas. He's only been back in the country for a few days. How could he mobilize these kinds of resources? He preferred to believe it was a rival corporation making a move. What he didn't know was that at that very moment, in a private club overlooking the city, Leo Vance was swirling a glass of red wine, gazing out at the glittering skyline. Behind him stood Blade, his formidable subordinate, built like a tower of steel. "Sir, everything is proceeding as planned," Blade reported. "The Hayes Corp Hudson Yards project is completely paralyzed. Their estimated losses exceed $30 billion. Trevor Hayes is running around like a headless chicken." "Good," Leo said, his eyes as cold as the night. "This is just the appetizer. I want him to watch, piece by piece, as everything he's so proud of crumbles before me." "Sir, there's one other thing." Blade hesitated. "Speak. It's about Miss Sutton. Arthur Sutton has her under house arrest. It seems he plans to use her as a bargaining chip with the Hayes family to salvage the project." Leo's hand froze. His gaze sharpened into a deadly point. "They dare." A terrifying, murderous aura erupted from him, and the temperature in the room seemed to plummet. Blade bowed his head, not daring to look at his boss. He had followed him for 5 years, through firefights and betrayals, and he knew just how dangerous this man could be. He also knew that the name Claire Sutton was his only vulnerability, a line that, if crossed, meant death. "Have my men watch the Sutton house." Leo's voice returned to a calm, flat tone, but beneath the surface was a destructive storm. "Ensure Miss Sutton's safety. If anyone lays a hand on her, kill them without question." "Yes, sir." Blade took his leave. Leo set down his wine and pulled out his phone, opening a photo. It was a picture of Claire, taken 5 years ago. She was smiling, radiant, leaning against his shoulder, her eyes full of stars. He gently traced the outline of her face with his thumb, his own eyes filled with a deep, aching tenderness and regret. "Claire, just wait a little longer. Soon, I'll take care of everything, and I can bring you back to me, out in the open." Meanwhile, at the Sutton mansion, 2 guards were posted outside Claire's bedroom door. "Dad, this is illegal imprisonment. I'm calling the police," Claire yelled, pounding on the locked door. From the other side, Arthur Sutton's cold voice replied, "The police? Go ahead. Let's see who they listen to, you or the head of the Sutton family. Let me tell you something, Claire. Don't push your luck. The Hayes family has made it clear. If you agree to marry Trevor, they'll drop the issue with the Hudson Yards project and even share the profits with us. I would rather die than marry him." Arthur scoffed. "You think it's that easy? From now on, you are not to leave this room without my permission. You can come out when you've come to your senses." He turned and walked away without a backward glance. Inside the room, Claire slid down the door, slumping to the floor. She hugged her knees, burying her face in her arms as silent tears streamed down her cheeks. She wasn't afraid of being locked up or of her family's pressure. She just couldn't understand. "Why, Leo? Why did you say those things? Was 5 years of waiting all for nothing, but the words nothing to do with each other? Did I get it all wrong?" She picked up her phone, her hand trembling as she navigated to a number she knew by heart, a number she hadn't tried to call once in 5 long years. Taking a deep breath, she pressed the call button. The response was the same cold, mechanical voice she'd half expected. "We're sorry. The number you have dialed is no longer in service." Her last sliver of hope vanished. She turned off her phone and curled into a ball in the corner, like a small animal abandoned by the entire world. Chapter 7. For 2 full days, Trevor Hayes investigated, but came up with nothing. His opponent's methods were too sophisticated. It was as if an invisible hand were manipulating events, erasing every trace. The stock price of Hayes Corp plummeted after the Hudson Yards disaster, with billions wiped from its market value. Panic spread through the company. Just as Trevor was on the verge of a complete breakdown, an unexpected discovery gave him a renewed sense of hope. His tech team managed to recover a small, fragmented piece of code from the wiped databases. After analysis by a top cybersecurity expert, it was determined that the code's signature style bore the unmistakable mark of Hades' capital. "Now, it really was you." Reading the report, Trevor wasn't shocked, but overjoyed. A predatory grin spread across his face. "You magnificent bastard. I was wondering how I was going to get to you, and you just delivered yourself on a silver platter." He immediately made a bold decision. He would host a dinner party, a setup. In front of the New York media, He would expose Leo's crimes and ruin him completely. He admitted that he couldn't compete with Leo's current status and wealth head-on. But this was America. This was New York, not some lawless foreign country where Leo could do whatever he wanted. Business had rules. Using hackers to steal trade secrets was a serious federal crime. Once exposed, it wouldn't matter if he was Hades. He'd be facing a long prison sentence. He had his assistant send an invitation to Leo in his name, inviting him to a private banquet at the Plaza Hotel in 3 days. The official reason was to clear up misunderstandings and discuss potential collaborations. He was sure Leo would come. Leo's target was him. Now that he was feigning weakness, Leo wouldn't pass up the chance to humiliate him in person, and Trevor would be waiting with a perfectly laid trap. "Sir, an invitation from Trevor Hayes," Blade said, presenting a gold-embossed envelope to Leo. Leo glanced at it, a cold smirk playing on his lips. "A setup, is it? Interesting." "Sir, this is obviously a trap. Hayes must have found something and plans to use it against you," Blade warned. "I know," Leo said calmly. "He thinks he has leverage. He thinks he can beat me in my own game. He has no idea what he's up against." He stood and walked to the window. "Tell him I'll be there." He watched the storm clouds gathering over the city, his eyes dark and deep. "Trevor, you think this is your chance to turn the tables? No, this is the execution I prepared for you." 3 days later, the Grand Ballroom at the Plaza Hotel. Trevor had booked the entire floor, decorating it to an absurd level of opulence. He had invited reporters from every major news outlet in the city, along with a host of influential business figures. Everyone was curious what Trevor was up to. Just days ago, he and Leo were mortal enemies. Why the sudden truce? At 8 o'clock, the man of the hour, Leo Vance, arrived on time. He wore a simple black suit, same as always. He had brought no bodyguards. He walked into the ballroom alone, his calm presence filling the room. Trevor immediately plastered on a wide smile and hurried over to greet him, shaking his hand with excessive warmth. "Lau, my friend, I'm so glad you could make it. Your presence here is a great honor." He played the part of the humble, gracious host, as if their past animosity had vanished into thin air. Leo coolly withdrew his hand. "The pleasure is all mine, Trevor." After a few minutes of hollow pleasantries, Trevor led Leo to the seat of honor. The banquet began. Trevor made a great show of his connections, constantly raising his glass, schmoozing with a city councilman here, laughing with a bank president there. He wanted to make it crystal clear to Leo. This was his turf. "You might be a big shot out there, but in New York you play by my rules." After a few rounds of drinks, Trevor decided the time was right. He stood up, glass in hand, and walked over to Leo. "Leo, I'm a straightforward guy. I know we've had our differences, and for my part in that, I apologize," he began, adopting a humble tone. Then, his expression shifted, his eyes hardening. "But business is business, and I respect a strong competitor. What I don't respect, however, are dirty, underhanded tactics." The statement hung in the air, and the room buzzed. Everyone could smell the gunpowder. The reporters excitedly aimed their cameras at the two men. Leo took a slow sip of his wine, his expression unchanged. "If you have something to say, Trevor, just say it." "Great. I appreciate your directness," Trevor said, his trap sprung. He clapped his hands, and the large screen behind him lit up. On the screen was a string of code and an official report from a top cybersecurity firm. "Leo Vance." Trevor slammed his hand on the table, pointing an accusatory finger. "Are you going to stand there and deny that you sent hackers to steal the core data for my Hudson Yards project? I have irrefutable proof right here. What do you have to say for yourself?" He had finally revealed his trump card. He would crucify Leo in the court of public opinion, branding him a corporate criminal. The room exploded in a flurry of gasps and whispers. Everyone looked at Leo in shock. If what Trevor said was true, the business titan who had just made a legendary comeback was about to become a common felon. Faced with the accusations and Trevor's triumphant glare, Leo's face slowly broke into a strange, unsettling smile. He set down his glass and began to clap softly. "Uttery! Truly bravo." He looked at Trevor with an expression of pure pity, as if observing a foolish child. "Trevor, is that what you think my methods are? You think you've caught me? You are so naive. Just as a flicker of doubt began to creep into Trevor's mind, Leo's phone rang. The crisp, clear ringtone was jarring in the tense silence of the ballroom. Leo glanced at the caller ID and smiled at Trevor. Looks like you won't get the chance to hear my explanation after all. He answered the call and put on speaker. Chapter 8. A man's voice, raw with terror and choked with sobs, screamed from the phone. Trevor, you have to come back. Something terrible has happened. Trevor knew that voice better than his own. It was his father, Robert Hayes, the chairman of Hayes Corp. A lead weight dropped into Trevor's stomach. Dad, what is it? Calm down. I'm in the middle of something important, he hissed, but the tremor in his voice betrayed his own rising panic. Important? Nothing is important anymore. It's over. The world is ending. Robert Hayes wailed, his voice cracking with despair. The company, Hayes Corp., is bankrupt. What? The word was a physical blow. Trevor froze, the wine glass slipping from his fingers and shattering on the floor. What are you talking about? That's insane. How could the company be bankrupt? It's true. Just minutes ago, all of our bank accounts were frozen. Our stock was targeted by a massive short sell attack from some unknown entity and wiped out in seconds. All our physical assets, including the very building we are in right now, have been acquired in a hostile takeover by Hades Capital for pennies on the dollar. Robert Hayes's panicked words, broadcast over the speakerphone, echoed through the ballroom. Every syllable was a hammer blow, striking at the heart of everyone present. Bankrupt? The most powerful family in New York, the multi-hundred-billion-dollar Hayes Corporation, was gone. Just like that, in a matter of minutes? It was impossible. Everyone stared at Leo as if he were some kind of monster. What ungodly power did this man possess? Short selling, freezing accounts, hostile takeovers. This wasn't business. This was something else entirely. It was a complete, dimensional annihilation. Trevor was completely broken. He stood there, catatonic, his mind unable to process what his father was saying. His perfectly planned takedown, his irrefutable proof, had become a colossal joke in the face of such absolute, overwhelming power. He thought he was playing chess while Leo was playing checkers. He never imagined that Leo wasn't even on the board. He was the one who owned the entire game. No. Impossible. This can't be happening. He mumbled, staggering backward until he tripped over a chair and collapsed onto the floor. Leo ended the call and slowly rose to his feet. He walked, step by deliberate step, toward the broken man on the ground. The ballroom was deathly silent. Everyone held their breath, watching this stunningly dramatic scene unfold. An hour ago, Trevor Hayes had been the king of the world, the most powerful young man in New York. Now he was a bankrupt nobody, and the architect of his downfall was standing over him, looking down. Leo crouched, picked up a shard of the broken wine glass, and gently patted Trevor's cheek with it, the sharp edge drawing a thin line of blood. Trevor, do you remember that rainy night 5 years ago? Leo's voice was a soft whisper, a devil's murmur in Trevor's ear. You asked me what it felt like to be on the ground like a dog. Now I'll show you. Leo stood, using the toe of his shoe to tilt Trevor's chin up. His eyes were devoid of any warmth, any mercy. 5 years ago, you put your boot on my head. Today, you will kneel. Kneel and beg for my forgiveness. If you do, maybe I'll be merciful and let you live. The final humiliation. Trevor's eyes flashed with a hint of defiance and hatred. Kneel to Leo Vance? He couldn't. But when he met Leo's gaze, a gaze that looked at life and death with utter indifference, the last shred of his pride was shattered by pure, primal fear. He knew Leo wasn't bluffing. If he didn't kneel, he might actually die right here. Thud! Under the shocked, contemptuous, and fascinated stares of hundreds of people, the once great Trevor Hayes, heir to a fallen empire, fell to his knees. He bowed his once proud head, his voice a broken, humiliated whisper. Now, I was wrong. Please, forgive me. With that, all his pride turned to dust. With that, one era ended and another began. On a television screen, Arthur Sutton and his wife watched the live broadcast, their faces masks of horror. As the scene unfolded, Arthur's eyes rolled back in his head, and he collapsed, unconscious. His wife let out a piercing shriek and slumped to the floor. a dark stain spreading rapidly on the fabric of her pants. They knew. The end of the Sutton family had arrived. Chapter 9, the moment Trevor Hayes knelt. A shockwave tore through New York's high society. Overnight, the name Leo Vance became a whispered legend, a synonym for absolute, terrifying power. The man had announced his return in the most brutal, direct way imaginable: submit or be destroyed. After the banquet, Leo didn't spare Trevor another glance. He left the hotel without a word. To him, Trevor was now an ant he could crush at any time, unworthy of another moment of his attention. He had more important things to deal with. "Sir." In the car, Blade handed him a tablet. "We have movement from the Scorpio Syndicate." On the screen were photos of several fair-haired men, clearly foreign, who had just entered the country posing as tourists. "How many?" Leo's eyes went cold. "5. All of them are elite-level assassins. Their likely target is—" Blade trailed off. "Claire Sutton." Leo finished for him. "Yes. We intercepted their communications. They plan to kidnap Miss Sutton to use as leverage against you." A cruel smirk touched Leo's lips. "Finally. I've been waiting for you. Where are they now?" "They've taken up positions near the Sutton estate." "Excellent," Leo said, leaning back and closing his eyes. "Give the order. Lock down a 2-mile radius around the estate. Cut all communication signals. I want those rats trapped in a cage with no way out." He opened his eyes again, a flicker of warmth in them. "And tell our people to be quiet. Don't frighten her." "Yes, sir." Blade immediately began issuing commands. In the darkness, an invisible net began to close. At the center of the storm, the Sutton mansion was in chaos. Arthur had been rushed to the hospital, and his wife had suffered a complete nervous breakdown. A cloud of apocalyptic dread hung over the entire household. They sent people to the Hades Capitol headquarters to beg for a meeting with Leo, but they couldn't even get past the front gate. They were finally beginning to understand the terrifying nature of the man they had wronged. A panicked maid unlocked Claire's door. "Miss, it's terrible. Your father. He's in the hospital." Claire rushed out of her room to find the house in disarray. Her mother was huddled on a sofa, rocking back and forth and muttering incoherently. From the maid's tearful explanation, she pieced together what had happened. When she heard that the Hayes family had been bankrupted overnight and that Trevor Hayes had knelt and begged Leo for mercy in public, she was utterly stunned. It was him again. Now, what has he become? Did he do all of this? Was it all for revenge? Were his words at the summit? Were they part of that revenge? 1,000 questions swirled in her mind, leaving her heart in a tangled mess. Just then, a faint noise came from outside the villa. Claire walked cautiously to the window and looked out. The night was dark and quiet. She couldn't see anything, but a strange sense of unease washed over her, a feeling of imminent danger. She didn't know that just beyond the walls of her family's estate, a silent, deadly battle was taking place. 5 shadowy figures vaulted over the perimeter wall like ghosts, moving with practiced silence. They were Scorpio's top assassins, masters of infiltration, their hands stained with blood. But the moment their feet touched the ground, several glints of cold steel flashed in the darkness. Thwip, thwip, thwip. A few soft, wet sounds of blades meeting flesh. The 5 assassins collapsed without a sound, their throats pierced by black-handled combat knives. Blade emerged from the shadows of a large oak tree. He glanced at the bodies and spoke coolly into his calms. "Targets neutralized. Clean up." Dozens of figures appeared from the darkness, swiftly removing the bodies and cleaning every trace of blood, leaving the manicured lawn as if nothing had ever happened. The entire operation took less than 3 minutes. Inside the room, Claire's anxiety grew stronger. She picked up her phone, her thumb hovering over that disconnected number out of habit. But then, her phone buzzed to life. It was an unknown number. Claire hesitated for a moment, then answered. The line was silent. All she could hear was the sound of steady, measured breathing, a breathing that was both strange and achingly familiar. Claire's heart leaped in her throat. Her voice trembled as she whispered, a hopeful, fragile question. "Thou?" Chapter 10. The silence on the other end of the line continued. But Claire heard it. The instant she said his name, that steady breathing hitch just for a second. It was him. It was really him. Now, say something. Is that you? Claire's voice broke, tears welling in her eyes. 5 years of worry, of longing, of confusion. It all came pouring out in that single moment. A long pause followed. Finally, a voice came through the phone. It was hoarse, restrained, and heavy with an infinite weariness. Open the gate. Claire froze. I'm outside your house. She dropped the phone and ran. She flew down the stairs, not even stopping for shoes, her bare feet slapping against the cold marble floor as she burst out the front door. In the darkness, a black sedan was parked silently outside the estate's ornate iron gates. Leaning against the car was a tall, solitary figure. A man in a black trench coat, the wind whipping at its edges. He just stood there, as if he had been waiting for a century. It was Leo. Tears streamed down Claire's face. She ran to the gate, her hands gripping the cold iron bars. Now, open it. Let me out. Leo didn't move. He just watched her through the bars, his expression a complex mask of emotion she had never seen before. There was pain, regret, longing, and a strange finality she couldn't decipher. Go back inside, he said, his voice rough. No, Claire cried, shaking her head. You have to tell me what's going on. Why did you say those things? Do you have any idea how much you hurt me? Forget about me. Leo closed his eyes, as if he couldn't bear to look at her any longer. I'm not the Leo you knew. I'm a bad person now. I don't care. Claire's emotions finally broke free. I don't care if you're a good person or a bad person. I just know that you're Leo. The Leo I've been waiting 5 years for. We're over, Claire, Leo said, his voice as sharp and cold as a shard of glass. The Leo Vance from 5 years ago is dead. He turned, about to get back into his car. Don't go, Claire screamed, her voice tearing. She watched his retreating back, a wave of despair washing over her. An idea sparked her mind. She turned and ran back into the house, re-emerging moments later with something in her hand. It was the black card she had given him 5 years ago. Over the years, Leo had deposited a fortune into the account through untraceable overseas transfers, but Claire had never touched a cent of it. Now, she pushed the card through the bars of the gate, letting it fall at his feet. Take this back, and I'll believe you, she cried. Take back the only thing that still connects us, and I'll believe that we're really over. Leo's body went rigid. He looked down at the familiar black card on the ground. This card, it had been his only light in the darkest of times. It was the entire reason he had managed to crawl his way back from hell. He bent down slowly and picked it up. Claire's heart sank into a black abyss. She watched him, the color draining from her face. So this was it. It was really over. But Leo's next move left her stunned. He didn't put the card in his pocket. Instead, he turned and walked back to the gate. Through the iron bars, he took her hand and pressed the card back in her palm. Then, with those deep, ocean-like eyes, he looked at her, truly looked at her. Wait for me. He said only 2 words, but they exploded in Claire's mind like thunder. Wait for me. Not it's over. Wait for me. A fresh wave of tears streamed down her face, but this time, they were tears of joy. She nodded vigorously, so choked up she couldn't speak. Looking at her, a gentle smile, the first she had seen in 5 years, finally touched Leo's lips. He took one last, long look at her, then turned, got into the car, and was gone. The black sedan melted silently into the night. Claire clutched the card in her hand, as if it were the most precious thing in the world. She knew. Her Leo was back. Whatever he had become, whatever he was going through, he had asked her to wait. And so she would, even if she had to wait for an eternity. In the car, "Sir," Blade began, glancing at the man in the rearview mirror, who had once again become as cold and hard as ice. "Back to headquarters," Leo commanded, his eyes closed. "Yes, sir. Tell everyone the final operation is moved up." Leo's voice was laced with a chilling frost. "I want every last trace of the Scorpio syndicate in this country wiped from the face of the earth. Before sunrise." He had planned to play with them a little longer, but now he couldn't wait. He wanted to get back to his girl. Chapter 11 that night. An invisible war was waged in the underbelly of New York City. To the average citizen, the city slept peacefully, but to those in the criminal underworld, it was a bloody, unprecedented purge. Dozens of seemingly legitimate businesses bars, nightclubs, shell corporations, were uprooted and destroyed in a single night. Every person connected to the Scorpio syndicate, no matter their rank or how deeply they were hidden, was dragged into the light by a mysterious and ruthlessly efficient force. There were no trials, no negotiations, only death. By the time the first rays of sunlight touched the skyscrapers, the city was calm again. The bloody storm of the previous night might as well have been a dream. Haiti's capital headquarters, penthouse level. Leo hadn't slept. He stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, the faint smell of cordite still clinging to his clothes. Blade entered. "Sir, it's done. They're all gone. Scorpio's entire network in North America has been crippled. They won't be a threat to you or Miss Sutton for the foreseeable future." "Good," Leo nodded, his face impassive. To him, it was merely pest control. "What are your orders regarding the Sutton family?" Blade asked. Leo was silent for a moment. He pictured Arthur Sutton's greedy, opportunistic face and his wife's shrill, condescending voice. The old Leo would have had their family follow the Hayeses into ruin without a second thought. But now, he thought of Claire. They were her parents. "Let them live," Leo said coolly. "Acquire a 51% controlling stake in the Sutton Corporation. Arthur can keep his title as chairman, but strip him of all executive power. Let them spend the rest of their lives working for me." Some punishments were worse than death, letting them keep their vast fortune, but with no power to wield it, forced to live every day in fear and regret of him. That was a more fitting sentence. "Yes, sir," Blade said and departed. Leo turned, shedding the blood-stained trench coat and changing into a clean suit. He looked at his reflection in the mirror. His eyes were still sharp, but the brutal edge, the murderous aura that had clung to him for years, had softened. He picked up his phone and dialed a number he knew by heart. This time, she answered on the first ring. "Lau." Claire's voice was a mix of hope and disbelief. "It's me," Leo said, his own voice softer and warmer than it had been in 5 years. "I'm coming to get you." Half an hour later, Leo's car pulled up to the Sutton estate. This time, the ornate iron gates were wide open. The butlers and maids were lined up, bowing their heads in terrified silence, not daring to breathe too loudly. Leo ignored them all and walked straight into the house. Claire was standing in the middle of the grand foyer. She had changed into a long white dress and wore light makeup. She was breathtaking. Their eyes met, and 1,000 unspoken words passed between them. Leo broke the silence first. He walked to her, reached out, and gently cupped her face, his thumb stroking her cheek. His eyes were full of remorse. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry I put you through all that." Claire shook her head, tears shimmering in her eyes. Are you okay now?" "I'm okay." Leo pulled her into a gentle embrace. "It's all over." He held her, and he told her everything. He told her about going overseas, about building his empire in a world of violence and betrayal, about his war with the Scorpio Syndicate, and why, to protect her, he had to stage that cruel public breakup. He spoke of it all in a flat, detached tone, as if telling someone else's story. But Claire could feel the truth behind the words. The years of living on the edge, the constant danger, the blood, and the brutality. Her heart ached with a pain so sharp it felt like it was being torn in two. She clung to him, holding him tightly as if she could absorb all his past suffering into herself. "It's over. It's all over now." She sobbed into his chest, crying like a child. All the pain, all the heartbreak, all the confusion she had felt, melted away in the face of the truth, replaced by an overwhelming wave of love and compassion. Just then, there was a commotion on the grand staircase. Arthur and his wife were being escorted downstairs by 2 of Leo's guards. Arthur was in a wheelchair, his leg in a cast, while his wife looked dazed and broken. Seeing Leo and Claire locked in an embrace, their faces twisted with a complex mix of fear and shame. Thought Arthur, ignoring his injuries, threw himself out of the wheelchair and onto the floor, prostrating himself. "Now, Mr. Vance, we were blind. We were fools. Please, have mercy on us. Spare the Sutton family." His wife snapped out of her stupor and scrambled to kneel beside him, wailing. "Yes, Mr. Vance. Claire's your fiancée. We're family." Leo's eyes turned to ice. He released Claire and turned to look at the 2 pathetic figures on the floor. Family. He laughed, a cold, humorless sound. When I was at my lowest, you tried to force Claire to dump me and threw me out of your house. You didn't talk about family then. When I returned and you thought I had abandoned her, you were so eager to sell her off to Trevor Hayes. You didn't talk about family then either. Every word was a slap in the face. Arthur and his wife could only stare at the floor, their faces ashen. Leo paid them no more mind. He took Claire's hand. "Let's go," he said softly. "I want to take you somewhere." He led her by the hand, and under the terrified, reverent gaze of the entire Sutton household, he walked her out of the gilded cage that had been her prison for far too long. Chapter 12. Leo took Claire to the top of the summit at 1 Vanderbilt, the highest observation deck in New York City. Tonight, the entire place had been cleared out. There were no tourists, no crowds. Just the two of them. The night air was cool. Claire pulled her shawl tighter around her shoulders, mesmerized by the sea of lights spreading out below. "Why did you bring me here?" Leo just smiled and told her to watch the sky. Suddenly, a low humming sound grew around them. Claire gasped as thousands of drones lifted into the night sky from every corner of the city, like a swarm of fireflies converging in front of them. They danced and swirled in the darkness, forming breathtaking patterns. First, a single, perfect rose, its petals slowly unfurling. Then, the silhouette of a couple waltzing among the stars. Finally, all the drones came together, forming 5 enormous, brilliant words against the black velvet of the sky. "Marry me, Claire." Claire covered her mouth, her eyes wide with shocked delight. Across the city, millions of people looked up from their windows and streets, marveling at the unprecedented, city-wide declaration of love. But that wasn't the end. Leo snapped his fingers. FVOOS album. From all 4 corners of the city, spectacular fireworks erupted into the sky. Red, green, gold. A dazzling symphony of color that lit up the night, turning the skyline as bright as day. The display lasted for a full 10 minutes, a grand, thunderous announcement of his love for the whole world to see. Claire was too overwhelmed to speak, tears of pure joy streaming down her face. When the last firework faded, leaving the sky serene once more, Leo took her hand and pressed a soft, reverent kiss to her knuckles. Then he slowly, gracefully dropped to one knee. He took out 2 things from his pocket. One was the black card she had given him 5 years ago. The other was a diamond ring that blazed with an internal fire, its brilliance outshining the stars above. "Claire," Leo said, his voice full of a deep, unwavering emotion she had waited a lifetime to hear. "5 years ago, you gambled your future on me with $20 million. Today, I want to pay you back with the rest of my life." He gently placed a black card in her palm. "There's $100 billion on this card now. It's not much, just a little something for her. Pocket money." Claire laughed through her tears. Leo opened the ring box, presenting the magnificent, one-of-a-kind diamond to her. "Claire Sutton, will you marry me? Will you be my wife, the only one for the rest of my life, and let me spend all my days loving you, protecting you, and cherishing you, forever?" Claire was sobbing now, but her smile was the brightest thing in the sky. She nodded over and over again. "Yes, yes, I will." Leo smiled, and with a steady hand, he slid the ring onto her finger. A perfect fit. He stood, pulling her into his arms, holding her close. He leaned in and whispered in her ear for her alone to hear. "Wife, let's go home." And across the city, the sky exploded in celebration one more time, with a sea of fireworks that seemed as if they would never end.